funk. Thoughts deep, boys steeped in the depths that he sunk. Big stress, depressed in the middle of fall. Sky gray, I late in the thick of it all. I wonder, how long can a human survive just staying alive or carrying the rest of the tribe? Waiting for the day to arrive or struggling dies, and I be doing way, way more than getting by. So why? Cop myself a cup of coffee, sipping water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Hey, cop myself a cup of coffee, sipping water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Eyes realize life is so much more than just living a day. Every day I can sit and reflect and breathe and connect to myself and know that I've been given. See, giving up is not an option. So when I'm looking at gray skies, I'll be adopting a new way to deal with a test. Lord, relieve me of stress. The rain be looking like when blessings dropping. And so I go, cop myself a cup of coffee, sip of water, rain it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Coffee, sip of water in it softly, cleanse me of stress I hold. Hey, here we go. Yeah. Let's do this. Y'all ready? 1, 2, 3. In times of test, let no harm beset me, oh my Lord, oh my Lord.
Right. She's good people. And
yes. And, oh, Jesus Christ. I got to get this right. Here we go. Now we have it right. Good evening.
Nope. Sorry. Initially, the switchboard lit up. There's never been so many calls. There were more calls than there were protesters yesterday against Trump saying, put that boy on first and keep your ass off. But go ahead. Ruin the show. It's okay.
Right. So it's a good mistake. But anyway, it is Divided We Stand, and we're basically at 8:09 p.m. in Bridgeton, New Jersey. This is the 15th of June. This is our 281st show. And it doesn't look like it's going to stop, folks, because we have a fascist government, and divided we must stand. If you're unfamiliar with this channel or this show, we are Divided We Stand. You can find us on YouTube. We ask that you subscribe to this channel. We are not monetized, which means we're not looking for any money. We're not in it for the money. And we also are on Facebook. If you go there, you have to put in a search, but you'll find Divided We Stand, and you request membership, and we'll approve you, as long as you're not a rabid Trumper or something like that. So we really would appreciate if you. We work very hard at this. At least sometimes we work hard at this, and Dave and I have invested a lot in this, and we hope that you will join us because it's that important. And we are just facilitators. We're not bosses or anything like that. So please do that. And also, don't forget, David and I are on Substack, and that's going to be a big push in the next year because now we can centralize what we want to do. If we get 10 subscribers inside Substack, then we can have live video from Substack. So right now, I think I'm at like 12 subscribers, but only around 7 or 8 are within Substack. So I can't put out the videos. And I think Dave will agree, and I'm going to have him on in a second, that that's really the best platform for something as specific as this, because Facebook is the group pages are fine, but Facebook itself is not really the best platform for trying to get your target market. And of course, YouTube is fine, but the algorithms work against us in YouTube because we're not a monetized channel, and we don't. Quite frankly, we don't have a lot of subscribers. We have roughly 430 subscribers, which is not a lot. And we probably won't get too many more, at least not through the algorithms. So we need all your help. But again, we want to migrate, not leave, but part of the bulk of the channel, we want to move it towards Substack. That's where we'll be most successful, and we can as a group, we can do a lot more. I mean, everybody can be a part of that. So if you think of it, look for David Price on Substack, look for Brian Weinstein on Substack, and please subscribe and share it out. We have articles, and Dave's going to be doing some video. In fact, I think what we'll do is we'll just go right to Dave right now and ask him first
what I'm doing.
Yeah, definitely with Substack. We only get you on here, Dave. There you go, and there you go.
Okay. Well, for those who aren't familiar with it, in my way of thinking, it's the best thing out there right now. If you're opposed to Donald Trump and you want to understand what you should do about it. And the reason I say that, the real short version is this. With Substack, it was, 3 years ago? Maybe a little bit longer.
Something like that,
yeah. They what happened was, as newspapers started to fold and people were out of a job, some newspaper people got together with some tech people, and they said, let's do something about this. So basically, you could look at Substack as the largest newspaper or the largest TV station you will ever subscribe to, because it does have podcasting, it does have webcasting, it has video, it has columns. And the nice thing about it, for both the people working there, or using it, I should say, and those benefiting from their use, is it can all be free. So there's no cost. What happens is, for anybody who's interested in it, as long as you don't charge, for example, we don't charge for anything we do on Divided We Stand on YouTube or Facebook or any of that. As long as you kept that, no money ever exchanges hands either way. But basically, most writers have a free part of the channel and a paid part. And subscriptions in general would be, one of the very common ones is $5 a month, right? So for a year, it's $60, but if you get the whole year, it's like $50. And then what Substack does, it then takes 10% of your money, which is very good. Most places who do this take 15 to 25%.
Didn't know that.
Some of them even take a third, depending on what you work with. So if you want to know where the best anti-Trump writing is, it is on Substack. Now, let me give you just two quick things that happen. So Jim Acosta, because of what his approach to Trump was dropped. He's on there. Jim Acosta now is remember, it's Jim Acosta unfiltered. He had to, when you work for MSNBC or Fox or CNN, it doesn't matter whom. There's a ton of bosses that have a ton of conflicts about what you're doing. Same thing with Joy Reid. She's on there. If you liked her now, imagine how good she'll be without being, without having to look over her shoulder all the time for censorship. Right. The gentleman from ABC who just got fired, he got on there three days ago. So I mean, it's there. It's basically, it is now a very much pro-democracy anti-Trump, but not diatribes. I mean, thought-out pieces. They've got some of the best. Robert Reich is phenomenal. Former, was he Labor Secretary, right? And there's just the best writers are there. Even the people who turn on Trump. Michael Cohen has a very interesting subject, and you get all this for free, up to a point. But then, if you want to go further, like if you really like somebody like, I don't know, well, let's say Jim Acosta,
right?
He also has a pay version where you get even more, but you don't have to spend. So, as Brian said, we're going to look at it. We're going to be there. And we'll be there in different ways. And the irony of it is, it looks like at this point, Brian's going to do a lot more writing than he's done, and I'm going to do a lot more.
Which is kind of like changing roles,
podcasting,
because I'm more of the digital creator and you're the writer,
right,
and we're doing the opposite, which is kind of fascinating.
But which is kind of interesting too, because we Brian and I usually talk a few minutes before the show starts, and we're talking about Substack and what we're going to do, and how when Brian gets in a couple weeks when school gets done, we'll have more time. But it's also a learning process, and I like that too. I mean, it's just going on there. It's not just as easy as dropping your stuff. I mean, you don't have to be an editor. You don't have to be all that. And the other thing, ladies and gentlemen, that I'm really experimenting with is AI. And periodically, not on this show, we won't take up time, but other places I'll talk about it. And it's like anything else. It is tremendous if used properly. It's tremendous if you know how to use it. It's tremendous if you use it for what it's meant to be used for. But do not think that AI is this horrible thing. It's not. It's really, really not. It has its problems. For example, just one thing, and then we'll get off of it. I was doing something with AI the other day. I play around with it, and so I said, "Well, I'll AI myself, right, and find out what's going on in my life." And actually, I found out that I was a 63-year-old man from Ohio who had died a year ago, and it had my whole biography. So, I mean, it does make mistakes, but the idea of it is the country has made a mistake. We elected the wrong person, and let's talk about that. So I'm going to suggest where we start tonight, Brian, but you're going to start us first. I don't know about you, but I actually, for a moment, I knew it was coming. I shouldn't have been stunned, but for a moment, I was not dumbfounded. I was just registered dumb with the assassination, and it was a murder assassination and a failed attempt, one successful, one failed, in Minnesota. Your take on it. What do you think happened? What's going through your mind?
Well, this certainly isn't a one-off, because we go back to 2011 with Gabby Giffords. And in general, the idea of these revenge heads, for whatever reason, you have the Kyle Rittenhouses, you just see a pattern developing. And the interesting thing is that it seems to be very little being done about it. You don't see the reaction from Trump about this. You don't see it from most Republicans. The only reaction you really see is that they're trying to protect themselves now, because obviously they think their skin is more important than mine or yours. And this is going to make it very, very difficult for anybody running for politics now, because you're going to live in fear. And it's harder for the Democratic winners, politicians, because you can't be assured that the federal government is really going to be there to back you. I think if Trump is as evil as I think he is, and as you think he is, he will purposely let these people die. And this is the beginning of where it gets really, really bad. Now, can the rest of America stomach it? That could be another conversation we have in a couple minutes. But for right now, this is a bad situation.
Well, I think you certainly introduced it well. I have long maintained, and nothing has shaken my belief in, actually the most important thing a president does, and someday hopefully it'll be a she president, a woman president does, is that they set the tone for the country. That's it. Everything else kind of flows from that.
Stuart, can we just interrupt? If you want to mention this, but I kind of agree with that too. Yeah, I mean the Timothy McVeigh thing.
Oh no, you've got But
that was more anti-government, but now they're isolating it toward Democrats.
But Stuart's on something here. First of all, well, let me just finish my thing about Trump, and then I want to jump into what.
I'm sorry for interrupting, but that's just what we do here.
Oh no! I think that's important. So what happens is Trump has set and extremely violent, vindictive, retaliatory, take out the people. His whole thing is based on narcissism and lies. I mean, there's nothing. We were having a discussion down here, and we actually sat for Brian with some really smart people, all of whom in that room were smarter than I was. And we tried for about 20 minutes to come up with one positive trait that Trump has, outside of the fact that he's a great con man. I mean, that, you know,
Right.
but I'm talking a positive trait, and there isn't one. So you've got this tone. Now, what we don't know, of course, at this point, is what motivated the killer to do
They're
this.
still
Now,
after him, right? He's still at large. Isn't
well, as my understanding
Boatler,
is,
Beltler, or something?
I checked.
Belter.
I checked just before we went on air to see. They've arrested his wife,
he? Good.
and she had passports and some other stuff, and so it looked like they were going to make a run for it. And if I read correctly, and somebody else who knows out there,
Well, what a brave man! All that bullshit.
Right.
He runs.
well, and there seems to be a question. If I read it correctly, and please, if anybody knows more, let me correct me now. But I think they had like 4 kids, and 2 of them were with the mother, but 2 of them are missing. So did he take 2 of the kids? Is he on the run? Where is he? And again, we have now. What's the difference?
He'll kill himself. That's my prediction.
Now I'm going to say in this case he will not, and I'll tell you why. I believe, based on what I know of him at this point, which is basically he is 100% MAGA, but he's also 100% God-centered being. Notice, he is everything that we should fear and dislike about America today. But it may be that God called him, okay, to do what he's doing, and he might.
God seems to do a lot of that lately for some reason.
Yeah, well, of course, when you have, we had another discussion, and I pointed this out. Started with MLK. We can go all the way back, Garrett, and you're right. Look, let's just call it what it is. America was founded in violence, and it is existing in violence, and that's never gone away. Okay. Now, it doesn't mean maybe someday we can't get there, but at this point, violence. There's a saying, violence is as American as apple pie, and I think there's truth to that. I do. Fortunately, not everybody uses it. But the other thing is, the great book just came out. I just started meandering through it. I don't have time to read the whole thing. It's about the delusion and the danger of the American myth of the cowboy, right? And that's kind of one of our founding, kind of our a male is a cow, is this cowboy who settles himself. And I not too long ago, I was looking at the TV shows that I really like. So among them, Sopranos, The Wire, and I'm going like, wow. Kiefer Sutherland's 24. I think he's a great actor in that show, and they're extremely violent. Our video games are violent. We're lacking more and more in schools. I was an educator in education for a whole bunch of years, more than I care to remember. I think 34 total, off and on. And Brian, you're still there. And am I safe in saying that more and more kids are not able to really deal with the personal social aspects? That's what I found. Because again, they're focused on their phones. They're focused on.
Well, the phone is
whatever.
the number one. It's
Right.
a physical event that has happened now that did not happen in the past. It has. I mean, you and I both know that it has cut down on discipline. With kids chatting back and forth where you can't keep them quiet. But there are other issues.
But what I'm saying is, I think I notice it here now. Again, where I live, a little different than where some other people live. I live in Crystal City, 3 metro stops, 4.6 miles from the White House, 3 metro stops from D.C. But a lot of young people from all over the world here, and they don't seem to be. I mean, they communicate fine with each other if they're not on their phones, but they just don't seem to have that outward thing.
Right.
So I think it's something that's lacking. So you get these, and then you get an upset person who gets angry, rage. I think I said what I attributed it to, and I haven't seen anything to change it, was unfettered rage and hate. That's pretty much, and I think you had that with McVeigh too. I think that is the tie-in, and what we're finding a lot is there's 3 kinds of violence. All right, there's people who don't do it but support it. All right, oh, he deserved that, he needed that, I would do that if only I could shoot my neighbor, that kind of thing.
It's a
for the
vicarious
support.
thing, basically.
Right, but both ways, right? Then you have the groups that you join, and that, of course, would be Proud Boys, the Klan, all these violent, White Aryan Nation, Oath Keepers. The list goes on and on and on. And they used to be, which is interesting, Brian. They used to be confined pretty much. The Klan was the South, right? And
like the Posse Comitatus group was like in Idaho or something, northern
right,
Idaho.
and now they're all over. Okay,
Right.
they're all over. They may be in your
Michigan for
neighborhood.
sure, in the peninsula.
So anywhere, but it is a major problem, violence in America. Gary put up earlier, founded in racism. I mean, think about that. Do you realize that the White House and Congress were built by slaves? The White House specifically. So I mean, it's so embedded in our consciousness that it's going to take massive efforts. And of course, Trump is the worst. Trump is the worst person that I could think of who could win the presidency. There's worse people, but they couldn't win the presidency. To be president in this time, with the hypocrisy, the hate. I mean, think about this. I was thinking about this the other day. Melania, who may or may not be the most gorgeous first lady, and she's not, but people say that. Again, she's taking the same thing up. One of her causes is bullying. Her husband is the biggest bully in America.
Right.
There's nobody bigger. But he's a chicken shit bully. He doesn't even wait to get the punch in the nose. If it's just if the wind's wrong, he's so with Minnesota. This is again, if anybody updates, what I understood is this: the person, the killer, was posing as a police officer, had taken his car and reworked it to resemble that of a police car, and came to two separate houses, both of whom had, one was a senator and one was a representative, and shot husband and wife in one. And
Horrible.
The wife was
in the middle of the night, too.
Wife was a politician. The other one, again, if I read it correctly just before we went on air, her husband's still in surgery coming out. He was shot 9 times, and she was shot 8. Now, a couple things. I don't mean this to sound light or funny, but what kind of killer fires 9 bullets into someone and doesn't kill them? What the hell kind of thing was that? Right? I mean, think about it. Really good professional killers do it with 1 bullet. Now, I'm very grateful that they didn't for this couple, right? Because it looks like they will make it. Now, how does this all tie in? Well, here's another way it ties in. Right now, ICE is in violation of everything I consider law enforcement to do. And basically, you should not disguise your face, and you should always wear identity says I am this, I am that, I am the other. And then you have the idea of grabbing and well, look, let me ask you, Brian. I mean, if tonight at 3 a.m. a policeman came knocking on your door and said, Mr. Weinstein, I got to talk to you for a minute. There's something going on, and you need to know about it.
Open it because I have
You would open it. We all
law.
would.
Right.
We all would.
You can't blame them for being decent citizens. They did the right thing.
Right. And that's.
But now that's all changed.
But and as Judy put up earlier, with Trump, the only thing I've seen so far is he did kind of hint around that maybe this was a bad thing, but he said, but Tim Walz is a horrible governor. Tim Walz there was a list. Apparently, there was a list. Now, I don't know where I guess they found it. I mean, I guess he escaped without his car. I'm not really sure, because I thought they said the list was in his car. But anyway, there was a list, and on there, Waltz was on there, and a number of other people. So that's not real reassuring, because he's out there still. And I think you touched on what may be the biggest problem of all in terms of government, is that if you're a government official now, given Gabby Giffords, given Oklahoma City bombing, given this latest shooting, given the attempt to kidnap Governor Whitmer, from all this stuff, again, 99.2% of the time directed toward Democrats. But Republicans are getting death threats all the time So if you don't, you better be with my boy, Mr. Trump. God made him president, and you better, it was getting him Rand Paul. I started laughing, but because he's like a kind of he's not on board with all the things Trump and MAGA want in the Senate. It does give you pause. Okay, now you can say, or I can say, or any of us can say, well, and I've said it. If you really fear for your life, you shouldn't do that. Right? I mean, but
do you
then
think,
again,
Dave? Do you think that Democratic politicians? I mean, we can talk about Republicans later, but should they arm themselves? Right. I mean, or can they be armed?
Well, okay. This is my feeling on guns. Unless you know how to use a gun perfectly, a gun is more of a harm to you and others than it is your salvation. I often think. Remember when they had the shooting in Aurora? I think it was Aurora, where at the what was it, Batman movie or whatever it was?
Yeah, something like that. It was in Colorado, right?
Yeah, Colorado. Can you imagine who are you going to shoot? Who are you going to shoot? There's been a couple occasions where somebody who was shooting the bad guys got shot and killed himself because they thought he was a bad. I mean, police come in. It's just a bad.
Right, it's
situation.
a bad scene. Right.
Now, I happen to be a firm believer that unless it's a way of last resort, killing is wrong. Now, let me say, we'll put this situation up. Tonight, 3 a.m., somebody knocks on my door. They come in. They pretend to be an officer. I see that I'm in immediate danger. My wife's in immediate danger. If I get a chance, I will kill them, and I will not feel a bit of remorse.
Right.
Not a bit. Now, people will say, oh, you don't know that. Yes, I do know that. Okay, I do know that. Now, would I initiate that? No, of course not. But we're there. And so the real question is, and then we get into some great philosophical, theological, spiritual debates. Is it like Michelle Obama said, when they go low, we go high? Can that be done? Is it like MLK? Nonviolence is the way. Now, what I find interesting is the two of the most significant figures. And Gary pointed out, in the civil rights, it was their movement. I think, of course, would be Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. Right. And Malcolm X was associated more with, violence, chickens coming home to roost, and by any means necessary. And MLK was the God, spiritual kind of thing. Before they were both assassinated, Malcolm X was coming around to King's way of thinking more, and King was coming around to Malcolm X's way of thinking more. Of course, it doesn't matter; they were both killed, as so many of our leaders have been. So violence is not new. We haven't learned much from it. We just continue to do it. It would be interesting, Brian, and of course, I used to do this, but it was a different clientele. I don't know if you could do it now in school. What I would always do a couple lessons on violence, because the nice thing about teaching English is you can bring anything into it, right? I mean, find a story and we can bring it in. But I asked them, when I first started there in the 80s, I would ask them, how many guns do you think are in the school today? And the number never varied. They said 3. Now, I don't think there's 3 in there today because of the metal detectors. And, I think it's naive to think there's not some, but I don't know if that. So what I find interesting in the people that don't know Bridgeton, it's a fascinating community in that there's extreme violence. At one point, it was rated the most dangerous city in America. I don't know if you knew that.
Really? No, I did not know that.
But by per capita, there's more crime in Chicago, Detroit tonight, but I think it's something like a 1 in 11 chance of being a victim of a violent crime, But in school, there really was not all that violence displayed, fights and things like that. I saw the same thing when I worked in D.C. for 4.5 years. I was working all over the country, but I was based in a all black school. Dunbar, interesting place. Never saw a fight.
Why was that, Dave, you think?
Well, I think, I wasn't there all the time, okay? And because they said they did have some fights. And I think there's a certain of that in Bridgeton. Dunbar and some of the DC schools are a safe zone, right? Now, the same kids out on the street that night, whole different world, right? But again, I never felt threatened by any of them. Maybe it was I was strange. I'm strange anyway. But the fact that a white man was sometimes probably the closest white person to me, sometimes, especially if I was in Anacostia, was maybe 6 or 7 blocks away. So, it was just kind of an anomaly. But back to this violence thing, because I'm glad we're here, is you have a president who's not going to stop it. He's going to exacerbate it. And that makes it tough to do.
And some of the judges around the country, the Trump, like Bruce Schrader, is going to make it easier for these people.
Well, and that's and we
you won't even need a pardon.
One of the things, and this one we could do a whole show on this one. I understand at one point when the NRA was extremely powerful. It was. They had money. They had lobbyists. They have a lot of things, right? And so they were, one of the factors controlling pretty much the government on the Republican side. But even Democrats sometimes had to do that. I've spoken often about Bernie Sanders. He had to have a very high NRA rating or he doesn't get elected. Right. So it's not, there's some things like that. But the idea of it is the NRA is done. They're done. And we still don't move on gun reform. What does that mean? I don't know. I think it means that violence is within the American culture. It's part of the masculine male myth, and it's part of the justice. Kyle Rittenhouse figured he was doing the just thing by taking out the bad guys. Was he? No. Was he delusional? Of course, yes.
The police were giving him high fives and giving him water.
Look, you see that. Look, there's bad and good in law enforcement all over the country. As a journalist,
I'm going to interrupt you again. What would have happened? Okay, look, Bruce Schrader was obviously sympathetic with Rittenhouse. Republicans were sympathetic.
Mm-hmm.
He felt threatened. But I want to ask you honestly, and I think we kind of know where I'm going with this. But right. I do want to. If I had a weapon and I had one of those super soakers, but the real one, so to speak, and shot him because I felt threatened, what would have happened to me?
Well, I think there's no question that they haven't cornered the market, but they've damn close cornered the market on hypocrisy. The Trumpers, Trump himself, don't do what I do. Don't even listen necessarily to what I say. So the other thing I was thinking when you said it is, what about if Kyle Rittenhouse had been black?
Right. What a great point. Oh, my God. Absolutely. Well, let's run through that thought experiment.
Okay. Well,
and everybody in the group here, please, chime in. Don't.
Oh yeah. Back. Well, here's what I've been thinking about a lot this week too. First of all, I want to say there are very wise minds right now who are saying this will go down as one of the most significant weeks in American history. Mm-hmm. Number of reasons for it, but among that, so we have for the first time in years, we have a United States sitting senator wrestled to the floor.
Right, we forgot about that.
By asking questions. Now, if he had been white, do you really think he would have been wrestled to the floor? I do not.
I think he would have if he were a Democrat. If you were a Republican, he would not have been wrestled to the floor. I think it's more absolutely political.
But they didn't know that at the time. They did not know. They would not.
Do you think they didn't know that he was the senator?
That is correct. Absolutely correct. Because apparently Kristi Noem said, "How am I supposed to know everybody in Washington, D.C.?" Well, bitch, you should know your senators because they kind of supposed to be your boss, sort of. I know you think it's Trump. So, no, I really believe it didn't matter. I think if they had known he was a senator, that might have overridden what they did. What they saw was an apparently angry, which he wasn't, threat to cosplaying Kristi Noem. And that's the way it went down. So Judy, I don't think there's any question. Yes.
Judy mentioned, she thinks that he would.
Oh, there's no argument. That's absolutely, that isn't even debatable.
Which goes to show you that, and I said this on Substack, that one of the, aside from the fact that you have political violence now, greater than before, Not that it was any picnic before, like just Gary pointed out and some others.
Right.
But it's the fact that it has increased, and now we don't know if that will extend to the general populace.
Well, I had a very interesting discussion. We can kind of just wave this in. Look, yesterday was a great day for America with the protests. We'll just leave it at that.
And this parade, fell flat.
What if the numbers will never be accurate? I mean, quite, and people do. But the lowest number I've seen, and I think it's way low for American participation, was in anti-Trump, no kings type protests, was 2 million, and I ranged to a high of 12 million. Okay. Now, some of that lower number maybe because they just did the 50 states. Because if you saw by early morning, it was all over the world. Because their time is 5-6 hours ahead of us, depending on where they are. So even at 2 million, say that's ridiculous, but let's say it's 2 million. The Pope, for a video conference, essentially, his first speech, he's from Chicago, and shout out to my Villanova. he's a graduate, although we never met. The crowd there is pretty much solid. It's 30,000. And the highest number I've seen on Trump's is 20,000. Now, I'm not an expert in Washington, D.C., but I have lived here 15 years. When I saw some of the footage of the places where it was taking place, I think 20,000 might be high.
By the way, Judy just mentioned that he did identify himself. Now, whether they believed him or not, and they said they knew he was a senator.
There's some question on that, Judy. I know he's saying he did. They're saying they didn't hear it. The idea was certainly that group jumped too early. But see, here's the other thing, Brock, and this ties back into the violence. Even though the bulk of the violence is being committed by MAGA acolytes,
right?
Well, they think everybody's a possible violence. So when they see somebody coming up, their first thought is they're going to kill somebody. When they're not, they're going to ask a question. So there's that. I'm glad, from my point of view, I'm glad they did what they did because Senator Padilla did not get hurt, and that's just another big strike against Donald Trump and the fascist regime that he has put in place in Washington. So,
but will that matter though?
It does. It does, Brian, because it's going to get, look, at some point, mm-hmm. If this continues the way it is, okay, now let's go back to my theory, a third, and a third. And what I mean by that, anybody who's new to the show, roughly a third of the country support Trump, and they're not going too many places. They're going to stay there. A third of the country is against Trump, and that is growing, okay? That you don't see Trump, Trump has his max. He can only lose support, barring something we can't envision. Then you get the third that didn't vote. And what's going to happen is, and we were talking about this yesterday at the protests, I'm making light of a very serious subject, but I wanted to. Trump is an equal opportunity hater. There's only three groups that I know of that he doesn't hate. Himself, and he's big enough to be a group. Number two, oligarchs, who for the most part are rich white men, for the most part. And the people that, no, not his supporters, none of that. It's anybody who can benefit him at that moment. But even that's transitional and transactional. So Trump, I'd be interested to know, as we're doing this show tonight, what's going through his mind about yesterday. I mean, does he fantasize and say, no, there were
He's going to blame somebody on it, not himself, of course.
Well, now here's the interesting one, and I urge everybody to follow this. One of the problems we have in America, everybody's now ascribing motive to things that are done, and I don't believe you can do that. You can know what I say, you can know what I do, but really, I don't think any person can completely every time analyze why I do it or why I said it. But there's huge amounts coming out right now that the army actually fucked with Trump by being slovenly. They said they were not in step. They were. Yeah,
I heard that too.
Their heads were down. They said the tank, one of these tanks, The only thing you heard the whole time on the street was the tank creaking like it was going to die.
Yeah, it was an old tank, like a 70-year-old tank.
Well, and they said that. They said, like, at one point they sent a Jeep in, and they said, it was, I think it was a World War II Jeep. Mm-hmm. And
right.
They said that would have been pretty cool if you had 7 or 8 of those, but it was one. So were the powers that be in the Army, did they, or did the troops
Or was
themselves?
it just too heavy because those are so heavy, those new tanks, that it would probably have ruined the entire street, and they can't afford to have that.
Well,
I don't know if that's the case, but I just know that they're very heavy and they leave tracks.
And I don't know if you saw. I urge everybody to see it. It is something else. Russia sent out a video trolling Trump's
Parade,
and what they use the Chinese, who are they're walking as one,
right?
And then the American soldiers are shuffling through the street. Now, if indeed they did do that as a protest, I applaud them highly. However, there's a danger there because now they,
Do you think they prepared for it in any?
I don't think.
way?
Well, somebody said, and I think it's interesting. The last time such a parade was held was 1991, and it wasn't even this big. So no, I don't think they. I think, and the other thing was this wasn't a parade. I mean, Trump didn't get the parade he wanted. Right? What he wanted was a Chinese-style Tiananmen Square or Russian
Red Square parade.
Red Square parade. He did not get that. What he wanted to do is have that, and he didn't. But
they did spend a lot of money on it, though, from what I've read.
The conservative estimate, and they said that's way conservative, is $45 million, and that's conservative. It's way over that.
Right, it had to be over that because you have to do a lot of things to get everything there and to coordinate.
Correct.
And then the stands.
Well,
and
actually,
you have to have security too.
Well, here's the thing. One of the things that I never really thought about, tanks started arriving 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
so they had to be stored.
Somebody
and
posted
we were headed out. Two metro stops from the Pentagon, and we're going to get my eye surgery. So I don't know if I saw real well, but they had the stuff stored at the Pentagon. I posted some pictures.
Use the old tanks? I mean, I don't.
Well, here's and that's a good question, right? This is where it fell apart. Trump wanted a show America power because I have the power. That's what he wanted. He did not get that because the Army flipped the script and said, no, we're not going to do it. This I know. We're not going to do a parade for Mr. Trump. We're going to make it a parade for the Army. So every sequence of the Army was represented. There were people in Revolutionary War uniforms. There were people in Spanish-American War uniforms. There were people in, now these weren't veterans, obviously, of those wars, World War II. So it was never the parade that Trump wanted. Now, whether he knew that wasn't going to be it, whether that's why he looked so disgruntled and unhappy for a moment. But the idea of it is, so either way, I think there's no way that reflected well on him. I also think that he, by ordering the military to do that, did a disservice to them. I think it is highly hypocritical to spend that money on a parade when we know that there are, well, I know of 3 in our neighborhood, veterans who are homeless, who are living on the streets. They should not. Veterans, I'll say it now, I'll say it again. If you've served your country that way, the country has a responsibility to take care of you. You took care of the country. It has a responsibility to take care of you.
Judy just said that he fell asleep during the parade.
Trump, it looked that way, yeah. Well, see, again.
Because he doesn't sleep at night, I know that.
Well, here's the thing. That's another big topic down here, is what's wrong with Trump. Now, that's not the what's wrong we know. They're talking about something physically, and I believe it's true. And I think it's more than one thing. I don't, you saw, there's a thing now with the crease.
Ronnie Jackson said he's in perfect shape.
Yeah, well, Ronnie Jackson also says he had sex with a unicorn or something. I don't know what else he said. No, so I mean, no, it's so that's another thing in our favor. I don't know if the deterioration is what I see. He fell on the plane or fell on the steps of the plane the other day.
That's true.
Now again, from what I've done now, I believe that Joe Biden was not equipped to be president when he was sworn in on 2020. Now, he did a hell of a job. Don't get me wrong. But physically, he was not there, and it only progressed to be worse. So people can hide conditions for a long time. Remember Woodrow Wilson, after he had his stroke, his wife ran the country.
Right.
I mean, he was
Right.
Frank. So there's we have a kind of a thing about doing that. So we got the military parade, we got the No Kings, and the one thing that I'm not going to discuss much, and I'm going to leave it up to you because I think you're far more expert than I. Once again, we have Iran and Israel. And I think anytime you have two nuclear powers, and I shouldn't say nuclear powers, certainly they have nuclear armament, that is cause for concern. I think, again, another divisive issue.
Now the problem is Pakistan, because
Well, I realize, you got Pakistan, India.
Pakistan and Israel, because we know that the first of all, I know a lot of people were worried about the reactors, but Israel did not attack the reactors. They're not going to do that because the what's it, uranium-235, whatever, the one that's really dangerous. They're not going to do that.
Right.
So they hit the facilities. But what Pakistan said is if Israel had used a nuclear device, that they would attack Israel with, and they have plenty of weapons there too. So now you have Pakistan, you have Turkey. Erdogan is congratulating Trump that he's going to bring the Israelis and the Iranians to the table. But here is the interesting thing, and I've said this all along, and I think you've agreed with me, Dave, if I'm not wrong. For those people, especially the conservative Jews or just conservatives who think that Trump is automatically going to support Israel, first of all, as soon as the initial attack occurred, it was Rubio who had to say something, and then Trump was kind of forced to say something. But the reality is, he's not giving them the big bunker busters. He's not going to give them any kind of offensive support, which they really need with that type of operation in Iran. Because it all is going to be is a missile war. They're not having shared borders.
They're not going to march. No,
right.
No. Well, I think anybody who looks at the situation and knows anything about Trump realizes that right now his financial, which is the only way he thinks, has to be with Saudi Arabia because the deals
that's number one, because that's where the money's coming from.
Has to be.
And Saudi Arabia, of course, is just a mortal enemy of Iran, but they publicly can't state that because they're afraid of the populace. So it's a very complex.
It is. Well, that's
Islamic problem.
But I'll tell you how it affects all of this stuff going on here domestically and internationally. I was talking to a couple after the rally, and he was a professor of theology and philosophy, college level, and they were retired, and she was a historian who specialized in studying world religion. So they have been going to Jerusalem or Tel Aviv, somewhere, every year for the past 20 years. They're not going now, okay? Because they see, they see the danger.
Oh, it's a big danger. I mean, it's going to be locked down for the next 2 or 3 weeks.
And maybe longer than that. No flights are in or out.
Somebody's got to win. And you see, here's the problem for Israel. I think this is the for those people, especially for those Jews who think that Trump is their guy for Israel, Trump's not going to do any offensive stuff. He's not going to do it. So it's going to bleed them out, and he's going to give them what they need to do what they got to do. If they want to knock out those not the reactors, but what they need to take out.
You're our Russian expert. Can you see any set of circumstances where Russia would back Israel? I can't, but I can't.
No, not. In fact, they're still directing this. Now they'll get involved with this to make it worse. But they are concerned about Ukraine. They are absolutely the Iranian thing is not so big compared to the Ukraine thing to the Russians.
Right, exactly.
And in the long run, it may, for us, Ukraine still may be the bigger of the two.
But
right now, it's concerning because you have missiles. Sooner or later, it's going to stop, but somebody's going to pay a big price.
Well, here's another thing that we're going to see. I will make a prediction. You're going to see a tremendous increase in the next weeks, if not months, of those saying Armageddon.
I'm thinking of with what happened in Colorado. My fear is that just regular Jews in America are going to be shot at. And this has nothing to do with, my policies about Israel and Iran.
No.
But I know what anti-Semitism is, and this is a problem that's going to happen.
And my feeling is, and this is just simplistic, I think that Netanyahu is a war criminal.
I think he's not a war. I think he's a horrible leader, and he's guilty of a lot of crimes. I personally don't agree with that, but I understand. I respect your right to say it.
Right. Now, the second thing is,
if he wanted to kill all the Palestinians, he could do it in 15 minutes right now if he wanted to.
I understand that, but that wouldn't be really providential or wise. I also think that Hamas is a terrorist organization. So you got a bad dude, in my estimation, and you got a really bad group going after one another, and who suffers? The innocents. A lot of times it's not.
Well, I'll say this: the good thing about the people of Gaza now, I think that they're so tired of it that they at least up until this point they've been protesting Hamas, because don't forget, Hamas, whenever the food that's being distributed, there's a lot of food that's being distributed, and a lot of it's from Israel. But the problem is that they keep shifting. Hamas takes it. And they take it. They go run to these hospitals, and we know what they're doing.
But don't you think too, though? I think people are people. So
you can argue that it's there is overkill, but how do you? The question is, how are you going to solve this? I mean, it's essentially this is not a Gazan war. This is a 75-year-old war that has just basically continued in the area. And we don't have a solution until...
I'm going to go back. It's a 2,000-year
war.
Well,
you could go that far, too.
In terms of not the current combatants, but it's there. And the same thing, and you're right, it's a very different situation with Russia and the Ukraine than it is with Iran. The problem is this. We are at a point, and have been at a point in a while, and Trump is the antithesis of the leader you need. It is now one world. Okay, it really is. What happens in China affects us. What happens in Pakistan affects
100%.
us. Now, we used to have. This is not an original idea with me, but I believe it to be true. We used to have the best natural barriers anyone could ever have. One was called the Atlantic Ocean. The other was called the Pacific Ocean, and up even through World War II. Right, that was still pretty protected. Now it's not. Okay, so what? And
an intercontinental ballistic missile gets here in 15 minutes.
Yeah,
they get to Israel in 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a lot of time to figure it out. And by the way, Brian, if you think we're going to have that golden dome, do you think he's going to protect the democratic states?
Look, first of all, we're not going to have the golden dome. It's just not going to happen. We have Starfleet Command or whatever.
Starfleet. It is. It's called Starfleet, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Space Fleet or whatever.
No, it's Starfleet.
Starfleet.
We watch one too many Star Treks.
Right.
But my point of all that is that Trump wants to be isolationist. It doesn't work. It didn't work ever really well, but it worked better because we didn't have. There are rules to war. No, of course not. Well, no, let me rephrase that. That's not true. I think this was interesting. Just an aside, but. I was really learned so much going to Eastern Europe because I know a little bit about, the places there, but to study fascism and communism up close and personal, it was really interesting. And of course,
Space Force is what she said.
Yeah, Space Force.
And Starlink is the one that is must.
Yeah, Starlink. So, but what happened over there, what was so interesting is listening to them about that is, and I've kind of heard of it before, but when the fascists came finally to Prague and took it over, and it got pretty bloody because they didn't come till 1944 to Prague. But then, because Prague was the closest to the Soviet Union, well, at that point Russia, and so the Russians are advancing, and the Czech people really wanted to surrender. Even those that were Nazis wanted to surrender to Americans,
yes, right?
Because they knew that. And Patton was there, and he was ready to go. He was ready. He wanted to go. He was ready. But America had made deals with Stalin, right. And I'm not saying they were all necessarily bad because we did win. But this idea, so yeah, Patton pretty much there was the rule was you followed your commander in chief, but that doesn't mean there's any rules in warfare, and there shouldn't be. I mean, imagine, Brian, I've thought about that. Oh yeah, I'm gonna kill you off. Now you and I, we've been friends a long time. I think we're very good friends. So we're in a foxhole, and I watch you get blown up. You think I'm gonna have any kind of, that becomes personal. I mean, beyond belief, and that's and war is really, Sherman was right. War is hell, and the only reason, if you're engaged in war, and that's part of what happened in Vietnam, we didn't push it. You shouldn't be engaged in war, but if you're there, you better damn win.
And that's that was the great thing that Sherman. I still believe, and this is just a layman saying that he saved a lot of lives. He did some cruel things.
Well,
but you know what? Quite frankly, as a logical human being, I think those people some of them deserved it. A lot of them deserved it. And if I were African American, I would believe the same thing. You're killing my people, and you've done the most vicious. You've raped, killed. You're getting it.
Isn't it interesting that I have Southern roots? My forefathers.
I've heard your accent.
Well, I can do that pretty damn well because I'm from Texas. But the idea now, what happens is, they were traitors. Okay, there was no romance involved.
Right, they were traitors. Absolutely, I think they were traitors.
Robert E. Lee, who kind of
Fort Bragg. The fuck.
Well, the other thing is with Robert E. Lee, he was brutal to his slaves, and I grew up kind of idolizing Robert.
But they should have hung him too.
Because actually, my middle name comes from him.
Oh, really?
Lee is my middle name, and my father. It was a very common name in our family to use as middle name in celebration. I thought you were
named after Harper Lee or something like that. No,
not Harper Lee, spelled differently. So, but isn't it ironic that you've got Trump, the tyrant and the traitor, we believe, the patriot that they believe, is now reverting to naming or changing the names back to Fort Bragg celebrates a traitor. Fort Hood celebrates a traitor.
Right. Anthony, I would say most people do believe in a two-state solution, but people who don't believe it, and this is the truth, most people in the Middle East who are Islamic do not believe in a two-state. They believe in a one-state solution. There is no state for Jews. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's the truth.
And, again, I know we're over, but it just reminds me of everything. In life, when things become more personal, right, to you, obviously they mean more historic things. Right. So I was very much influenced by the film Exodus. I don't know if you remember that by Leon Ura.
I was not into those kind of films. I know there was a film Exodus. But
and it was pretty.
I don't really like religious films, to be honest with you. So
it wasn't. Really
I apologize for not watching it.
No, it was.
I'd watch The Exorcist, but not The Exodus.
Well, that wasn't. Exodus is just the title. It had nothing to do with religion. Actually, it had to do with the Jews establishing their home.
Okay,
in
got
Israel.
you in Israel.
Okay.
Right.
So, but what happens in that movie? Paul Newman was in there. Now,
who's a Jew?
No, he wasn't. He was an American who was working there and that kind of thing, but Jewish.
But I'm saying he was a Jew, though. He's an American Jew.
But what happened is this. At the same time they're filming that, and then after, my mother was in the hospital in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. And guess who her roommate was?
Paul Newman?
Paul Newman's mother.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Now, I never got to meet him or see him. My mom did. Of course, he was making movies, so he couldn't be there all the time. But as I say, that movie really stuck with me because obviously it was very pro-Jewish.
Right.
But what happens is, at that point, they were definitely the minority who had suffered. And, I had no problem, being with them then. Now, I still think, they have a right to their homeland. That's just now.
But see, that's going to cause a problem, though, because in the Arab world, it's unacceptable to them.
I just said that. So once again, I think I'm not saying it can be worked
out.
Now,
can you force the Palestinians to do that?
You could.
I think you can, but it's going to be a little bit rough.
You could do. This is terrible. You could do what General Curtis LeMay said during the Vietnam War. He said, "Bomb them back to the Stone Age, and they're done." Would you do that? Should you do that?
I wouldn't do that. No. That's not the way to do it.
But notice
you have to be decent about this, and it has to be solved through negotiation.
Of course. But when you have a side, okay, Here you go. I'm just playing with you, Brian. But think
Right.
about this: solve the MAGA, non-MAGA rift with negotiation. Ain't gonna happen.
You're right. It's impossible. You got me on that one. That's right.
No,
You can't.
and I don't think I got you. I think it's the same thing with Ukraine and Russia.
Right.
Ukraine
That's
is defending-
they're both
defending
intransigent
its-
right now.
And it's Pakistan, India. It's Taiwan, China. Although Taiwan really doesn't stand a chance.
It would be over pretty quickly if we didn't.
But my point
help.
is, for being around for as long as we have human beings, are we really all that much different than when we emerged from the caves?
No, and that's
so
the
long
point
ago?
that must be stressed. We're nothing different than something 10,000 years ago, except we have a cell phone in our hand, and it's just the few that can invent such interesting devices that make our lives better, like the toilet or whatever. But
well, now there's no question. You and I've talked about this, and I believe that we are living in the best times. If you look at healthcare, until we got
Trump,
RFK.
right?
Trump and RFK, we're living in the best times of science. But here's the thing: science has a tendency to dehumanize because you're more on the shot. It's good, but I think science. Again, another book that just influenced me so much was Frankenstein. And basically, the monster is not the monster.
Right.
The creator is the monster. And that's what you have in government. That's what you have in science. That's what you have with the tech billionaires. I talked to a young man tonight, just moved here. I asked him, I said, what do you think you would need to make as a salary to live here and feel comfortable? He looked at me and said straight, $300,000. And he's right.
He's right, yeah.
He's right. Now, so you've got economic inequality, you've got racial inequality, you've got gender inequality, you've got sexual identity inequality, you have...
So you're saying we're fucked, basically. And I would understand that.
No, I'm going to tell you what we can't say that yet because it's too early. If this were to continue, yes, then we're fucked. What we don't know is there...
By the way, Gary keeps bringing this up. This is like the third thing. He keeps talking about, I don't even know what he's talking about, but Pinky Lee, is it something I should know? It's the third time.
No, Gary has a problem, okay? And his problem is most people have a brain, and Gary's, I think, sometimes just doesn't work. So I don't even listen to what he says. But
I have no idea what it is. I have no idea.
I know what he's saying. I don't listen to it, but I know what he's saying. Okay. So what happens is, and it might be happening with Gavin Newsom. I mean, I don't know. There may be somebody who rises, like Winston Churchill did in England, right? Sort of like they were able to get through it. We will come out of it much better. So no, I think I'm going to go down this road. I think yesterday in America was a positive day for us and a negative day for the Trump. Mm-hmm. That's now. How many negative days? What happens? I mean, I don't know that. Does it move the Supreme Court? What about? Well, think about this. What about if the Army was sending him a signal, basically like, we're not going to do what you tell us?
Well, I hope that was. This is the first.
I mean, we don't know. Look at it and research it. It's interesting, but it may just be that they didn't really care about it. It may not be they were doing it for Trump. It may just be, I don't want to walk it. It was like 964,000 degrees here. But anyway. So we solved all the world's problems, as we always do on Sunday night. Okay. And by Monday, though,
the same shit.
New problems, and we'll be there.
Dave,
but for tonight, just my last word is, if you are concerned about where America is with Donald Trump, Saturday was a victory. Let's see what he does.
All right. Dave, well spoken. Thank you. And if you remember anything tonight besides the shows, get to Substack, folks. I think you have to.
We'll be there soon. We're coming.
We're coming. Have to join it, though. Don't you to actually subscribe? You have
No. You don't have to join it. What you can do is you just find some. You just follow somebody. Like you can go in there and say, I'm trying to think of somebody who.
See if I can.
Well, I mean, so many of them. But if there's somebody you really want to follow. Then you just follow them, and then trust me, they'll make recommendations, and you can pick and choose. But you're not forced. It's not like you join Facebook, It's you actually start with it's really all individual. That's the best way to describe it. In other words, you don't have to subscribe to anybody you don't want to. And right now, it is virtually like Blue Sky. They are both virtually troll and MAGA free. That won't last forever, but right now it is.
All right. Well, thank you, Dave, and thank you, everybody. We really do appreciate the fact that you watch us. I know we don't have a lot of people watching right now, but that's fine. We'll get there. But we got a lot of issues we got to deal with, and we appreciate that everybody is offering their input. So thank you, Dave, and we'll see you. I'll talk to you before then, but we'll see you next week for sure. All right?
Sounds good.
Okay, Dave.
Thank you, everybody, for watching.